The Siren's song. The golden dawn spilled light across the cresting waves as Una drifted softly beneath the surface, swaying gently with the rhythm of the sea. She basked in the muted glow of early sunlight filtering through the water, her iridescent scales catching and refracting colors that seemed even more vivid below the surface. Each morning, as she stirred awake, these moments felt like whispers of magic, coaxing her into the beauty of existence. Even in her solitude, a pulse of unease thrummed in the depths of her heart. Today marked the day she would reveal her pregnancy to the elders, a significant moment for a mermaid of her lineage. It was a time of celebration, yet fraught with complications and fears her kin might not understand. Would they embrace this child destined for greatness, or would they see it as a burden too heavy to bear? As she glided toward the coral palace, its towers shimmering in deep blues and greens, Una's thoughts wandered to the child within her. Each flick of its fin felt like an echo of ancient prophecies, whispering through the very waters that cradled her. A union between land and sea was imminent, yet uncertainty clouded her vision. Would this child fulfill a prophecy that had hung over her family for generations, or would it be cursed by the dangers lurking above the waves? Within the palace, the merfolk were gathering. The wise elder of the community, stood at the forefront, her silver hair flowing like wisps of mist. She was the keeper of the sacred prophecies, her knowledge ancestral yet vivid, a beacon of wisdom that guided their existence. Una felt her heart quicken as she approached, sensing the weight of expectation in each gaze that landed on her. Una, daughter of the tides, intoned, her voice echoing like a distant storm. Today, we gather to hear your song of life. Is the prophecy fulfilled? Beneath the limpid gaze of the assembled gathering, Una hesitated. Elder she began, her cadence trembling with vulnerability. The tides have turned, and within me stirs a life, a child destined to reconcile our worlds. But I fear the storms it might unleash. A murmur coursed through the crowd, a wave of speculation and concern rippling across the room. What if this child brings misery upon us? A voice questioned, fraught with apprehension. How can we trust the prophecies that have yet to bear witness? Raised her hand, quieting the chatter as her wise eyes met Una's. We must not see prophecy as inevitability, but as a choice. There are two paths before us. Which shall we choose? Una felt that question burrowing deep within her, awakening uncertainties she could no longer ignore. Before she could respond, however, the ocean erupted in a cacophony of thunderous roars and gale winds that sent ripples of fear through the assembly. As if summoned by the chaos, a shadow broke the surface of the sea. A fishing boat, its net tangled with the shimmering bodies of her kin, pulsing with the energy of their desperate, final song. Panic surged through Una. The fishermen had come again, blundering into sacred waters, heedless of the ancient bonds they severed with each death they left in their wake. Her heart racing, Una turned to They are destroying us. We must warn them. We must reach the surface. F's expression hardened, a tempest of thoughts swirling behind her placid guise. To confront them is to invite danger. They see us as figments of folklore, dark spirits haunting their existence. We must choose our battles wisely. But the call of her kin, lost, thrashing, and fading, left Una rooted to the spot. Empathy entwined with a ferocious determination, compelling her to act. No, I can save them, she pleaded, gazing into the depths of F's ancient eyes. This child is destined for greatness. Perhaps it is time that both our worlds learn to coexist and understand. With a ripple of energy, Una propelled herself toward the surface, leaving behind the cries of her kin and charging into the unknown. As she breached the wave-topped expanse, the sun cast its golden rays upon the scene, illuminating the chaos of fishermen culling her kind for their supper. In that moment, the sea seemed to hold its breath, waiting for Una's resolve to surface alongside her. Meanwhile, on the fishing boat, Kofi clutched the net, heart pounding as he wrestled with a tangle of shimmering scales. His head spun with stories of the ocean's menace, of how mermaids cursed fishermen to drown with the weight of their greed. Yet as he gazed at the beauty thrumming in the grip of his net, doubt began to seep into his bones. Pull it up, Omar shouted, his voice sharp against the wind. Kofi felt a twinge of loyalty to his friend and the village as they prepared for yet another day of toil. But beneath that loyalty lay festering guilt as the cries of struggling merfolk implored him to act against the very fate he once believed in. Kofi's hand hesitated above the net, the water swirling around him responding to his inner turmoil as Una dove closer to the surface. His stormy eyes caught sight of something gliding toward him, a vision of beauty, shimmering like the moonlight reflected on the ocean. As he clasped the net tighter, Kofi felt a sudden pull within him, an instinctive connection blooming as Una surfaced beside the boat, regal and radiant. The world stood still, their gazes locking, and for that brief moment, Kofi sensed he was not in the presence of a demon, but a creature of destiny. "Release them!" Una's voice, melodic and ethereal, rang out, transfixing him. Time seemed suspended as Kofi's heart fought with an ancient fear and the burgeoning flicker of an unexpected realization. In that fleeting moment, he began to understand the truth buried beneath the weight of tales passed down through generations. But the sound of Omar preparing to haul the net would wrench him back to reality before he had the chance to respond. The choice hung in the balance, and it would take more than a momentary connection to change the tides forever. A storm atop the waves was brewing, a tempest that could very well decide the fates of Una's child and Kofi's destiny, igniting a chain reaction that would forever alter the worlds above and below the ocean's surface. Whispers beneath the surface. The world around Kofi roared with chaos, the fishermen shouting, the salty wind whipping at their faces, but all he could hear was Una's pleading voice echoing in his mind. A surge of resolve flickered within him, throbbing beneath the weight of fear and tradition. For years, he had believed in a singular narrative, mermaids bringing misfortune, creatures to be feared. But standing before him was a living embodiment of grace and resolve, and he felt the fabric of his convictions beginning to fray. "Don't just stand there, Kofi." Omar's voice broke through his contemplation like thunder. "Help me bring her in." With that urgency threading through the air, Kofi's instincts kicked in, responding against the tide of newfound understanding. As Omar and the other fishermen fought to drag the net up, he turned his attention back to Una, her deep-set eyes shimmering with a mixture of fear and hope. Time slowed, as if the ocean itself paused, contemplating the choices before them. "The others are in distress," Una urged, her voice more insistent now, as she propelled herself closer. "I can save them if you give me the chance." Kofi felt his heart racing, imagining the fate of his kin, the very same merfolk he had been conditioned to regard as an affliction, held a breadth of consequences reaching far beyond this moment. He could see in Una's translucent skin the shimmer of hope and desperation. "Please," she whispered, her gaze piercing through the weight of fear and uncertainty. "It's not too late." Shaking his head, torn between loyalty and compassion, Kofi finally moved. "Omar, wait!" His voice emerged with an authority that surprised even him. "What if we released her kin? What if we just let them go?" Omar paused, frustration etching lines across his face. "What? For what purpose? They'll come back to haunt us. The stories are wrong," Kofi exclaimed, the words tumbling out of him, driven now by conviction. "This isn't a monster. She's a guardian of the sea, and if we harm her kind, it's us who will bear the consequences." The shifting of feelings in Kofi's heart began to resonate with some of the other fishermen, as murmurs spread among them, a hesitancy that clashed with their upbringing. "Do you truly believe they would spare us if this continues?" Omar countered. "You can trust the tales, just like they did to your father." "I can't let this happen," Kofi breathed, a fierceness igniting within him. "Don't you see? We have the chance to change our story right now. Just think of our future." In that charged atmosphere, with visions of troubled faces and looming darkness ahead, Kofi reached for the net, urging the other fishermen to join him. "Help me. If we release them, perhaps they'll tell their kin of our mercy." With an uncertain nod from the others, the tension shifted again, as Kofi worked to loosen the ropes binding the hapless merfolk. As the water roiled with emerald and sapphire scales, Una watched, her heart beating as rhythmic as the tide. Relief washed over her. Perhaps there was a chance. With each freed mermaid that swam away, a spark ignited within Una. The hope of what her child could represent in uniting their worlds began to glimmer faintly. Yet, the fear that Kofi's act of mercy could lead to retribution lingered in her mind like storm clouds overhead. As the last merfolk broke free and disappeared beneath the surface, Omar made one last attempt, his voice laced with skepticism. "And if they seek revenge? If we've made enemies of them?" Kofi's gaze met Una's, and he felt the weight of an unspoken understanding. "Then we'll face it together. You aren't a monster, and maybe you can help us find peace." Kofi glanced back at his companions, who slowly began to lower their nets. "Let them go," he demanded, but with confidence now, as if the very essence of his being was entwined with Una's story. Just then, there was a splash, a surge from the depths that sent waves crashing around the boat, as dark shadows swirled beneath them. The fisherman reeled back in fright, reflecting the same chaotic energy that rippled through Una. What was happening below? "Kofi! Dive!" Una shouted, pointing towards an emerging storm of figures cresting the waves, their forms dark and foreboding. He hesitated only for a moment, his heart racing as he caught sight of something terrifying and breathtaking. A swarm of beings, vibrant yet with an unsettling aura. The shadows converged, taking the shape of shimmering merfolk, their eyes glinting with vengeance. Unknown to Una and Kofi, they were the kin of the merfolk released moments before. "Stay together," Kofi shouted, instinctively gathering his fellow fishermen. The air crackled with tension as he faced the turbulent waters, but faith surged through him, feeding his courage. As Una treaded water, her heart sank. She was torn between the very world she wished to unite, and the instincts that urged protection for her kin from a human society laced with fear. Would her plea for mercy condemn them all? Backdrop lightning and malevolent energies began to swirl. The air thickened with an ancient yearning for recognition, and amidst the anger blending with the surf, a voice emerged from the depths. "Foolish mortals, to free our kind only to summon such wrath." A figure radiant and imposing swirled above the waters, casting shadows against the sun. It was Lled, a sentinel of the sea, master of vengeance, a formidable force that screamed of heartbreak and blood ties. "Step forward, mermaid of the boundless waters," Lled's voice boomed, piercing through the chaos. "You who have disrupted our realm, did you believe your mercy true? Your actions have drawn a line, and now you shall face the consequences." Kofi's breath caught in his throat as he watched the shadows gather strength. But standing next to Una, propelled by an unexpected sense of unity, hope ignited in the depths of despair. "Wait," he shouted, stunned by his own bravery as his voice rang out through the gathering storm. "We didn't mean to harm your kin. We only wished for peace." Lled's menace faltered, if only for a breath, their intensity mismatched against Kofi's willingness to understand. "Peace? Do you dare speak of peace? Your actions have sown betrayal." But in that moment, Una found her voice too, the shimmering mermaid rising with her head held high. "No! They released your kin. You must listen. This is our opportunity to unite our fates. I yearn to see our worlds entwine, rather than divided by bloodshed." A wave surged, and the storm climbed higher, fueled by uncertainty. The merfolk's gathering was an imminent threat, yet Kofi's resolve blossomed, a rare chance at transformation nested within fate. He'd seemed to hover between fury and contemplation, the tides ever shifting as silence fell momentarily. The air crackled with unresolved tension, destiny intertwining like tendrils through the depths. The battle wasn't just within the waters, it was within each heart that stood poised on the precipice of change. Kofi reached for Una's hand, feeling the fusion of magic and raw emotion simmering just below the surface, as hope hung precariously between existence and oblivion. They had taken the first step towards something monumental, a choice that could echo throughout the ages or plunge them into the darkest depths of despair. But within this moment an ember began to glow, illuminating the pathway towards a destiny written in the ancient winds of fate. Tides of reckoning. The air trembled with tension, a heartbeat thundering beneath the waves as Kofi and Una faced Lled, the master of vengeance. The sea heaved and swirled, mutiny coursing through the waters as dark shadows circled like predators awaiting their quarry. Kofi could feel the weight of both worlds pressing down upon him, a fusion of fear and determination igniting within him, a fire he had never known. "Peace cannot be forged without sacrifice," he declared, her voice a tempest. "You claim mercy, yet your kind has waged war against us for generations." Kofi's throat tightened, the echoes of the fisherman's tales flooding his mind. Stories of merfolk luring sailors to their demise, tales that made monsters out of guardians. But standing here, with Una's fierce resolve beside him and the vulnerable, shimmering beauty of merfolk surrounding him, he felt the truth of sisterhood and kinship ripple through him, the stories twisted time and time again by fear. "I know the tales," Kofi spoke, his voice rising over the turmoil. "And I believe them, but that doesn't have to be our legacy. It doesn't have to be yours, either." Lled's gaze burned into him, assessing, pushing back against the tide of his conviction. "Then what do you propose, human? Your kind has taken so much from us. What is left but vengeance?" Una's heart raced. She could feel Kofi's courage coursing through her, spurring her own bravery forward. "What if we give you a chance to understand? An alliance is possible. Let us break free of this cycle of fear and bloodshed." The waters darkened, swirling ominously, as he contemplated their words. Shadows loomed larger, the air growing thick with a tension that made Kofi's breath catch. The other fishermen stood frozen, paralyzed by the confrontation, caught between their long-held beliefs and the audacity of Kofi's bold declaration. "You ask for trust from beings who have been wronged yet driven to desperation," Lled replied, her voice softening momentarily. "And how many of your kind would break the cycle of greed for one life?" But Una stepped closer, emboldened by Lled's momentary vulnerability. "If you wish, I will offer myself as an ambassador, someone who can navigate both worlds, so both land and sea can begin to understand one another." Lled's eyes glimmered with apprehension. "An ambassador? You would risk yourself for the sake of unity?" "Yes," Una replied firmly, conviction spilling from her heart. "I am pregnant with a child who could change everything. But that can only happen if we recognize that our fates are intertwined. We need to understand each other first." The waters around them stilled, a brief illusion of calm while shadows faded and advanced under the waves as murmurs echoed among the assembled merfolk. Questions of loyalty and fear lapped the edges of their silent deliberation. Could they begin again after so much ruin? "For too long we have avoided each other, lived in fear of the unknown," Kofi interjected, his heart racing with the weight of his own convictions. "But I'm here risking everything alongside Una, to show you that we want change. Seeking vengeance only leaves devastation. We have a chance, right now, to be different." Lled's grip on their audience tightened, her figure electrifying with authority. "The path of unity is treacherous. The tides of history are long and unwieldy. Are you prepared to suffer the consequences of failure?" "Yes," Kofi exclaimed without hesitation. "If it means my kin and the merfolk can thrive, I wouldn't hesitate to face any storm. Please, let's end the cycle." Lled's sharp eyes darted between Kofi and Una, weighing their earnestness heavy against the current that threatened to tear them apart. "The world you both speak of cannot be built on mere words. It will demand sacrifices and the dismantling of structures both of you rely upon. If it is an ambassador you wish, know that trials await, one that will test the will of both sea and land." "Whatever it takes," Una said firmly, her heart daring to believe in the hope woven between them. "Let us begin this journey together." Lled, commanding the swirling waters, turned her gaze to the shadows that danced among the depths, who seemed uncertain and restless. With a thunderous wave, she weighed the decision that the future demanded. "Understand this. Should you fail, it will not be just you who bear the wrath. Your fate is now intertwined with that of your people and ours." Kofi held his breath, adrenaline coursing through him as the tension lingered thick in the air, an invisible thread connecting him to Una as an emissary of change. "We're ready," he said, his heart pounding in rhythm to the wild tides. A silence descended, enveloping the fray of uncertainty and anchoring all eyes to Una and Lled. Not only did Kofi stand for the human side of the conflict now, Una had become a bridge between two worlds, daring to meet the challenge head-on. With a flick of Lled's tail, an iridescent command glimmered through her form, and the shadows that had loomed around them stilled, awaiting her guidance. "Very well. I shall grant you this opportunity, but heed my warning. The path ahead is fraught with hardship, and the shadows that shape our past may rise to cloud our future. Are you prepared?" Kofi felt the weight of centuries on his shoulders, but striving for something greater muted the storm of doubt within him. "We are." With that, Lled turned, allowing the shadows to form a path beneath her as bright, shimmering figures began to encircle them. "Then let the tides of reckoning guide us, and may this journey grant us the forgiveness and unity our worlds so desperately seek." As they swam deeper into the abyss, Kofi felt a surge of strength and fear coalesce. The journey had begun. Hope and trepidation laced together, they embarked on a path yet unwritten, confronting a destiny that threaded the complexities of life above and below the waves. The promise of transformation glimmered like sunlight through the shallows, a fragile glimmer intertwined with the chaos of life still hidden beneath the surface, waiting for them to unravel its ancient secrets. Kofi had taken the first step into uncharted waters, tethered to a mermaid who dared to dream of peace amidst the tempest. The trials of the depths. The deep waters of the ocean enveloped Kofi and Una as they followed Lled into an otherworldly realm, where the weight of centuries pulsed with every tide. Dark hues flickered beneath the surface, memories of a troubled past mingling with the movement of sea creatures. Lled guided them through caverns lit by phosphorescent algae, illuminating ancient prophecies carved into the stone. "Each trial you face will unveil parts of your past, both human and merfolk," Lled explained as they swam deeper. You must confront the darkness in your souls and the fears that divided our peoples. Kofi's heart pounded, engulfed by the mingling sense of salt and coral. What kind of trials? He asked, glancing at Una, whose determined eyes mixed confidence with fear. The past has ways of revealing itself, he'd replied cryptically. You will face visions, each a passage to understanding. As they entered a vast underwater chamber, crystals embedded in the rock glimmered like stars. He'd paused, her voice cascading through the depths. This is the chamber of reflection. Within you lie truths buried in shadows. Step forward and embrace your past. Kofi felt the pressure intensify, dread unfurling in his chest. Memories clawed at his mind, emotions bubbling just beneath the surface. What must we do? Close your eyes and breathe, he'd instructed. Kofi and Una exchanged a glance, then surrendered to the ocean's embrace. Darkness surrounded them as visions swirled around Kofi, pulling him into his past. He saw himself as a child laughing with his father, the shimmering sea around them alive with joy. But the warmth dissolved into shadow as his father was pulled into the depths. The tales of merfolk warped his memories into tales of destruction, anger clouding his understanding. Then Una's voice broke through the darkness. Kofi, don't let their stories steal your heart. Her words ignited his resolve, cracking the despair like dawn breaking over a stormy sea. The water became a tapestry of understanding as Kofi opened his eyes, gasping for air. Alone but reborn, he found he'd observing him with solemn understanding. Confronting the past reveals truths taught by the currents of fate, she said. Una, Kofi exclaimed, searching for her. He found her shrouded in shadows, urgency buoying him as he called her name. Her eyes fluttered open, burdened by memories. Did you see? Una whispered. Kofi nodded. The weight of our pasts, the fear that has governed us. We need to confront it together, Una said, determination lighting her face. You must take this journey as one, he'd asserted. Visions engulfed Una, revealing her life among the merfolk, a coral palace filled with laughter and joy. But shadows crept into the scene, voices accusing her of bringing doom. And oh, she cried, we did not bring this storm upon you. I wish to show you that our souls can dance in the light. Chains of shadows sought to bind her, but Kofi reached out, intertwining his fingers with hers. You have the power to change this, he urged. Speak your truth. With Kofi's support, Una's courage ignited. She sang, her haunting melody filling the space, calling for unity and healing. The shadows hesitated, then began to retreat, softened by the song's promise. As Kofi and Una emerged from their trials, they felt the weight of their truths. No longer individuals entwined in conflict, they were partners committed to forging a unified destiny. Though their journey was far from over, they stood on the precipice of transformation, a vivid possibility shimmering in the currents of fate. Shadows of the past. The luminous waters of the chamber of reflection now bathed Kofi and Una in a radiant glow, illuminating their faces as they breathed in the aftermath of their trials. He'd observed them with an air of gravitas, shifting her gaze from one to the other as though weighing the path that lay ahead. Well done, she finally said, her voice resonating through the water. You have faced the shadows within yourselves, revealing the truth beneath your fears. Yet, our journey is only beginning. Kofi felt an exhilarating rush of hope ignited by their shared revelations, but unease still loomed in the depths of his heart. What comes next? He asked, glancing at Una, who remained steadfast beside him, her fierce spirit woven into the confines of their journey. He gestured toward the far end of the chamber, where a translucent curtain of bubbling water danced like a portal, a veil between realms. You must enter the arena of ancestors, where the echoes of your histories reside, she revealed. To create a new narrative, you must confront the anger of those who came before you, to show them that the winds have shifted and a new course may be drawn. Una took a deep breath, steeling herself. I'm ready. I don't want to live in fear anymore. Kofi nodded, the decision rushing through him like a tide breaking against the shore. Together, they stepped toward the curtain and felt the water part before them, welcoming the unknown as they emerged into a vast, open expanse, a dazzling arena surrounded by shifting shadows and swirling currents. As they entered, Kofi realized they stood on a platform made of coral and sea glass, the shimmering colors reflecting all around them. Ethereal figures began to materialize amidst the roiling water, specters of their ancestors, merfolk and humans alike, drifting through time like whispers lost in the breeze. Fear tightened Kofi's chest as he caught sight of a familiar face, his father's, stern and unforgiving, standing amidst the growing crowd. The figure radiated a presence both comforting and daunting, a man who had once been both a protector and a harbinger of bitter tales. Kofi's heart sank beneath the weight of unspoken words. "Why do you return, son? Have you come to seek vengeance for our lost?" His father's voice reverberated, heavy with accusation, and the air grew thick with despair. "No," Kofi implored, though his voice quavered. "I did not come to seek vengeance, but understanding. I am here to change the narrative, to bridge our worlds." Behind him, other figures began to emerge, fishermen bearing expressions of anger and resentment, their eyes clouded with the weight of loss, reliving moments of tragedy woven into their histories. They eyed Una with suspicion, old wounds flaring with fervent life in their presence. "Mermaids are curses," one of the fishermen yelled, his voice echoing through the arena. "They are born of deception." Kofi turned to Una, who stood firm, holding her ground. "You don't know the truth," she cried out. "I am not a curse. I too have felt loss. I wish only for peace, not vengeance." "Peace?" Another voice cut through the shadows, a figure of a mermaid with scales glittering like night sky, her eyes swirling with anger. "You speak of peace, but it is our kin who drown in your nets. Who will protect them?" The tension in the arena crackled like lightning. Kofi struggled to contain his own fear and anger as deep-rooted grievances churned around them. The ancestors embodied the wounds that had long festered, wounds born of misunderstanding and emboldened by the weight of tales told in whispers of darkness. "Feel the weight of the stories," Lled's voice emerged softly, guiding them through the chaos. "Let them wash over you as you face your ancestors. Only by acknowledging the past can you begin to shape a new future." Kofi clutched Una's hand, grounding himself. "We are here to listen," he began, his words steadying as he faced the spectral onslaught. "To learn of the pain buried beneath the tales. What can we do to mend the rift? You can accept the truth of our lives." Kofi's father's voice rang out, piercing with both sadness and bitterness. "Accept that the sea holds our ancestors' pain, just as your hands have wrought death upon ours. Only when you understand the cost of your ignorance will you have the chance to change." "I was blinded by fear," Kofi admitted, feeling the full weight of his father's disappointment. "But now I see what I could not before. I want to fight for a new path for both land and sea." The figures shifted restlessly, their voices rising in tumult. "You speak of unity, yet can you truly carry the scars of both worlds within you?" "I can," Kofi asserted, drawing strength from the undeniable bond he had forged with Una. "Together, we can listen to the tales that lust for acknowledgement. You must allow us to bear your burdens and seek the compassion we have long stood apart from." Lled's presence loomed large as she infused the arena with her ancient wisdom. "Speak to them with your own stories. Let them know your truths and commit to holding them sacred. For within these walls dwell memories that hold us hostage, while the tides evolve for a new tomorrow." Looking to Una, Kofi felt her resolve. Their hearts now intertwined, two kindred souls poised against the shadows of their shared histories. "I wish to tell my story." Una stepped forward, her voice steady as she brought forth memories from the depths. "Growing up, my laughter rang through these waters. I played with my kin, but I have witnessed loss too. I saw merfolk gradually yield to fear, the legends of treachery transforming into tales of mistrust, until darkness swallowed the light." The spectral figures fell silent, caught in the tender truth woven into her words. Kofi recognized their vulnerability, an unfiltered testament to the grief that has haunted them forever. "I lost kin to the tales spun of destruction," Una continued, her voice rich with emotion. "While your hearts yearn to protect, know that we too share a bond with the foaming waves. Together we can break these chains that bind us to this cycle of vengeance." Slowly, the atmosphere shifted. The darkness began to recede, and the figures in the arena absorbed the essence of her tale, letting the tides of empathy wash over them. Kofi's heart raced as he felt a flicker of hope vibrate within the shadows. A breath of understanding began to seep through the cracks. He'd watched intently, an approving glimmer in her eye as the arena began transforming into a landscape filled with shimmering light. "Feel the healing," she encouraged, urging the spirits to unlock the bonds that tied them to the past. Kofi drew closer to Una, grounding themselves against the rising tide of history as hope surged anew. "It's time we dream together," Kofi called out to the ancestors with a steady voice. "Time we hold to one another's truths and release the burdens we have kept in shadow. Embrace this moment and guide us forward." In that fragile space, the whispers of change began to unfurl, threading their way through time as light burst forth from the depths. This vision of possibility suspended their grief, inviting something vibrant and transformative, a new tide washing away the remnants of old tales. As echoes of each story blended into a harmonious chorus, Kofi and Una stood as beacons in the midst of history, stepping forward in unity toward a future mingled with hope, an alliance wellness on the horizon, paving the way for redemption and awakening. Their trials forged the melding of two worlds, offering a new beginning to their intertwined destinies. A ripple in time, the luminous arena pulsed with vibrant energy, spectral figures suspended in a tapestry of memories. Kofi and Una extended their hands, weaving threads of bravery and vulnerability into an unbreakable bond grounded in shared truths. As ancient whispers filled the space, a resonant pulse invited them to heal collective wounds and forge a new path. Lled, watching with pride, declared, "You've stirred something profound. But each truth unearthed bears weight. You must face the repercussions of healing with courage." Shadows coalesced uneasily among the light. Ancestors' voices merged into a hum, resonating within Kofi. His father's voice broke through, "Speak of reconciliation. What is worth fighting for in this uncharted territory?" Kofi, emboldened by Una's presence, replied, "It's not just about protecting the familiar, but fostering understanding of what connects us, pain and joy alike. We must learn to coexist, building a shared future." Una added, "Together, we can explore histories of conflict that cloud us and shared victories that bring us closer." The ancestors nodded, their heavy expressions softening. Yet, a voice whispered, "Will your kind accept us? What assurance proves your unity is genuine?" Kofi responded, "We must grow together, nurturing trust over time." He declared, "You shall undergo the trial of unity, a test of your intentions and bonds' integrity. Unite the heart of the ocean with the land's essence, forming a bridge of humanity intertwined with the sea." Waters shimmered, forming a path to a realm where land met sea. Kofi felt exhilaration and trepidation. "We accept," he said, stepping forward. They arrived at a golden shoreline, where crystalline waves danced under radiant light. A vision unfolded, merfolk weaving through coral as villagers shared tales by starlight. Hopeful laughter echoed, celebrating unity. But shadows crept in, threatening balance. Lled's voice rang out, "Acknowledge fears and memories, or risk losing the light." Kofi, grappling with uncertainty, declared, "We'll take the step. But how do we face those rejecting our unity?" Shadows jeered, "You can't rewrite fate." Una countered, "We seek understanding, sharing truths to bridge divides." Kofi, drawing courage, called to the shadows, "You're part of our past and future. Together, we'll heal scars." The shadows sneered, "You'll always be the hunter, we the hunted." Kofi retorted, "Roles can transform. Together, we'll create a future where all matter." Surging forward, Kofi and Una's harmonizing anthem pierced the despair, wrapping loss in understanding. Shadows faltered, caught between defiance and light. Their connection ignited brilliance, scattering doubt. "Together we rise," they cried, radiance sparking unity, a ripple through time shaping generations. As shadows dissolved, Kofi and Una stood between land and sea, understanding their path was to forge, not as descendants of pain, but as champions of hope. A ripple in time began, its future hinged on love, understanding, and light born of darkness. The gathering storm. As the radiance of Kofi and Una's shared song shimmered through the watery abyss, the shadows began to retreat, their twisted forms flickering like candles in the wind. The arena pulsed with energy, a harmonic resonance enthralling those present, intertwining the fates that had long been separated by fear and misunderstanding. But as the harmony settled, Kofi felt an unfamiliar chill, a looming presence hovering beneath the surface. He'd stepped closer, her expression grave. "You have ignited a spark of unity, but shadows linger, still plotting their course. The mere act of harmony has awakened them, for change breeds anxiety amongst those tied to the past." "What do we do?" Kofi asked, urgency fueling his words. He looked from Lled to Una, sensing that a storm was brewing, a more profound challenge that the trial of unity had only begun to reveal. "Your next task is to gather allies from both realms, those who yearn for the bond you seek to forge," Lled instructed. "You will need those willing to listen, those ready to stand against the gathering storm." Kofi nodded, determination igniting within him. "We will seek out those who dream of a better future." He'd guided them through the ethereal curtain of water, leading them back to the coral palace, where the heart of the ocean pulsed with life. They emerged into a vibrant underwater realm, a dazzling display of colors and sound that sparkled with the energy of celebration. But beneath the surface beauty, Kofi sensed a shift in the current, the pulse of the ocean growing darker. As they approached the council of merfolk gathered near an ancient altar, anxious whispers rippled through the assembly. "Una! Kofi!" a familiar voice exclaimed. It was F, the wise elder mermaid, her presence a calming beacon amidst the unease encircling them. "What have you done?" "We can feel the shadows shifting, brewing with unrest." "The trial of unity," Kofi explained, heart pounding. "We confronted the shadows of our past, and together, we sought a new path for our worlds. But shadows remain. Those unwilling to embrace change lurk in the depths." F nodded, her gaze solemn. "And they will resist fiercely. We must call upon allies of compassion and understanding. Gather the elders and the warriors. Let us unite to prepare for the storm." As they spread the word, Kofi and Una felt the undercurrents of anxiety swirl through the gathering merfolk and fishermen alike. With the weight of change looming heavy, there were whispers of dissent among both worlds, old tales butting against the urge for reconciliation. A council was convened within the Coral Palace, all eyes focused on Una and Kofi as the room fell silent. "This is a critical moment," F began, commanding attention. "We stand at a crossroads. It is imperative we find strength together to counteract the forces that seek to divide us." Graham, a seasoned fisherman with a sun-weathered face and a beard as wild as his passions, stepped forward, skepticism lacing his tone. "But how can we trust? What if we extend our hands only to be met with more talons? The mermaids are not to be trusted." Kofi felt the tension rise, but Una reached out to him, her hand steadying his heart. "This isn't just about trust, it's about understanding," she implored. "You saw your own pain reflected through our visions, as I saw mine. If we dare to move forward, we must work together." Graham crossed his arms, uncertainty lingering in his eyes. "And if they turn on us? How do we protect our kin?" F's voice rose, piercing through the tension. "Fear has governed us for too long. It is time to break from tradition and embrace the possibilities that lay before us. While shadows still linger, they gain power through our divisions. We must gather those who believe in hope, those who dare to dream." "I want to help," a soft voice emerged from the shadows. It was Ayana, a shrewd and perceptive mermaid with a radiant aura. "I know of others among us who wish to break the bonds of stagnation. We have kin among the fishes, humans willing to risk the unknown for unity." Kofi brightened at her words. "We need them, merfolk venturing to the surface and fishermen willing to learn of our ocean culture." Ayana nodded, determination flickering in her coral-hued eyes. "We must spread this call beyond our borders." As murmurs deepened, Kofi grasped the moment. "Together we can cultivate understanding. Let us gather stories of unity to weave a new narrative." F waved her hand, gathering energy as flowing currents rippled through the air. "We shall organize a gathering under the auspices of the moonlit waters, a place for all to gather and share their stories. It is through connection that understanding will bloom." Kofi felt that spark igniting again, the allure of possibility pulsing through his veins. "Then we shall meet beneath the light of the moon." In the days that followed, Kofi, Una, and Ayana worked tirelessly to sow the seeds of harmony. They ventured forth into the fishing village, sharing stories that depicted their newfound hope, a vision that resonated with everyone caught in the ebb and flow of uncertainty. Introducing the human villagers to the wonders of the ocean, they painted images of unity and the chance to bridge the realms, a desire that began to catch fire within the hearts of those tucked into their everyday routines. Folk gathered each night, as fishermen felt the immensity of their losses echoing deep within them, a longing for change flooding the air. But the shadows deepened with every step taken. Dissent began to brew among warriors who had long embraced old tales, rebels who spun narratives driven by fear. Kofi's hopes mingled with anxiety as he sensed the looming storm gradually building on the horizon. On a night thick with anticipation, the moon hung low, pouring silvery light across the tranquil waves as they gathered at the shore. Villagers and merfolk stood together, luminous figures united against the night as Kofi took a deep breath, rallying his courage. "Tonight, we share our stories," he declared, heart swelling as the waves lapped at the shore. "We step into the unknown together, ready to challenge the fears that have kept us captive." The crowd murmured, tentatively waiting as Kofi waved his arms to invite them closer. "Let us weave a tapestry of unity. But know that shadows may stir once more, for fear breeds resistance." The air surged with anticipation, and Kofi glanced at Una, who stood beside him, her spirit radiating warmth against the backdrop of uncertainty. The tides were shifting, and even though trouble brewed just beneath the surface, he felt a renewed hope, a gathering storm that could capture both land and sea. As the waves swelled, Kofi knew they had chosen a path few dared to venture, a journey filled with trials but rich with promise. Together, they would stand against the shadows, lighting the way toward a future woven together by stories, not strands of fear. And in that courage, perhaps they could gather the storm into something more brilliant than the chaos that threatened to unravel them. Whispered warnings. As the moon climbed higher in the night sky, casting a silvery glow upon the shore, Kofi and Una stood ready at the center of the gathering. The air hummed with the mix of excitement and trepidation, villagers from the fishing community and merfolk coalescing into a vibrant tapestry of color and emotion, reflecting both their shared hopes and lingering distrust. It was time to confront the shadows that lurked just beneath the surface. Kofi felt an electric surge of determination course through him as he took a deep breath, bolstered by the warmth of Una's presence beside him. "Tonight, we bring forth our stories," he announced, his voice resonating across the gathering. Eyes turned towards him, both skeptical and curious. "Together, we exist on the edge of change. Our pasts may have divided us, but it is through our shared experiences that we can forge a united future." Unease danced among the villagers and merfolk, but the flickering firelight illuminated the faces of those who dared to hope. Kofi looked to Una, who gave him an encouraging nod, and a sense of purpose filled him as he decided to take the first step. Merfolk and humans alike have positions shaped by stories, some fruitful, some engulfed in shadows. Kofi began, his voice carrying the weight of sincerity. "I know many of us carry wounds from misunderstandings and fear, but let us transform the narrative, to honor the truth we hold individually, while inviting unity to take root." Una stepped forward, her gaze penetrating as she addressed the crowd. "As a mermaid, I have seen both beauty and sorrow in the depths of my home. The ocean carries whispers of those we have lost to fear and anger, but it also nourishes life. We are beings tied to the same world, striving for survival as one." As they spoke, Kofi felt the weight of history resting on their shoulders, yet hope hung thick in the air. The first murmurings of connection flickered to life, intertwined with uncertainty. Gathering strength, Kofi signaled to Ayana, who stepped forth, her voice tremulous yet rising with courage. "I am not your enemy," she proclaimed. "I long for understanding just as you do. We now embark on shared tides that can heal our fractured bonds. Our kin across the waves yearn for kinship. Let us seize this chance together." A ripple of agreement passed through the crowd, merging into a rising hum of anticipation. But just as Kofi felt the convergence of hope blossoming, an unknown chill crept through the atmosphere, a crackle of tension that pressed down like lead. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. Tall and imposing, with wild hair and piercing eyes reflecting the flickers of the flames, it was Omar, Kofi's childhood friend. The tension shifted as his presence became palpable, a stark reminder of the unresolved conflicts that still simmered beneath the surface. "Hold, Kofi," Omar called, his voice echoing like a thunderclap. "This is folly. We cannot trust them. Mermaids are tricksters. They have lured us with false promises, while many of our own have drowned." Gasps rippled through the crowd, merfolk recoiling, fishermen exchanging worried glances, uncertainty settling heavily in the air. Kofi's heart sank as Omar's words pierced the fragile momentum they had built. "We cannot ignore the truth of their tales. You cannot deny the risks." Omar continued, pacing forward with righteous fervor. "Our kin have perished at the hands of the ocean's enchantment. Look at their seductive waters. Look at what they promise." Kofi stepped closer, feeling the weight of betrayal and loyalty crashing upon him. "This isn't just about trusting or mistrusting. We can no longer let fear dictate our paths," Kofi declared, searching for strength among the thinning shadows. "Your words are naive," Omar retorted, his voice rising like a tempest. "The memories of our losses are too potent to dismiss. You put us in danger." Kofi clenched his fists, frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. "It is only by overcoming our fears that we can pave a new way forward. Together, the fishermen and merfolk can foster understanding. Can you not see?" An uneasy silence blanketed the gathering as the crowd hesitated, caught in the conflict that Omar unleashed. Kofi felt Una's hand grasp his tightly, grounding him amid the swirling atmosphere of distrust. "Omar," Una called, her voice steady yet tinged with urgency. "Listen to me. Your fears are justified, but so too are our dreams. We all bear the weight of loss. We cannot mask our wounds with shadows. We must confront them together. Omar frowned, grappling with the emotions battling inside him. He knew better than anyone the tales that shaped their lives. And if this is just another lie? If the old tales reveal themselves true? Can you defy centuries of betrayal? Kofi's heart raced as the eyes of the gathering were drawn toward Omar, uncertain yet eager. The only way we'll know is if we dare to try. If we commit to understanding one another, then we can rewrite the narratives that bind us. But what if it backfires? Omar pressed, challenges ringing in his words. What if we become the prey? Her eyes aflame with wisdom, stepped forth. The nature of fear will always exist. Even within the most stalwart of alliances, it is a part of understanding. Will you all continue to turn to darkness, or will you sway toward the light? Kofi felt a turning point, the air heavy with potential. The tides themselves held their breath, waiting for an answer. If we stand together, Kofi began, his voice steady now, we can create a future free of fear's grip. I ask each of you to lean into your truth. If every wave carries a lesson, let this be the lesson of courage, a chance to transform the legacy we share. Slowly, the murmurs around them began to soften, intertwining with the currents of understanding. The bond that tied them would not be severed by fear. They dared to seek connection. As the night deepened, Kofi and Una stood at the forefront of this growing alliance, light shining in their hearts like the moon illuminating the waters. Together, they had confronted whispered warnings, challenged shadows, and sparked a conversation that held the potential to reshape their destinies. With each heartbeat, they reached for unity, fostering connection, steering the new course not just for themselves, but for all who dared to hope. As Omar hesitated, caught between fear and faith, Kofi felt resolve blossom within him. They would face whatever shadows lingered, for together, they wielded the power to transcend all that had bound them to a fear-ridden past, a legacy waiting to be rewritten. The tide of allies. With the echoes of Kofi and Una's vision still swirling through the air, the atmosphere at the gathering began to shift. The murmurs of dissent faded, replaced by a glimmer of hope lingering like moonlight shimmering on the sea. As hearts opened slowly to unity, Kofi turned to Omar, who stood at the edge, conflicted yet intrigued. "Join us, Omar," Kofi called, extending his hand. "Help us forge this future. We cannot rewrite our stories alone." Omar hesitated, wrestling with loyalty and fear embedded deep within him. He looked at Kofi and Una's unwavering confidence, a beacon of promise illuminating the path ahead. "I want to believe you," Omar said finally, stepping closer but still wary. "Overcoming those fears requires more than belief." "We need you," Una said, her voice smooth as the ocean's waves. "If we are to reshape our worlds, we must stand together against the shadows." The crowd buzzed with anticipation, eyes locked on the three figures standing at the forefront, Kofi, Una, and Omar. It was a moment of truth, where threads of fate began to weave a new narrative. As dawn approached, Kofi and Una planned to reach both realms. Days passed in a blur of energy as they worked side by side. Kofi rallied fishermen to heed the call of understanding, visiting homes to share tales of ancient harmony, joyous gatherings beneath starlit skies, where laughter danced along the shoreline. Meanwhile, Una crafted messages for her kin, invoking the strength of ancestors and tales of lives lost to fear. She urged them to rise above the shadows of the past and embrace alliance with humans. Their stories became threads binding them together. Finally, the moment arrived for a meeting under the moonlit sky at the beach, where villagers and merfolk gathered hand in hand. Kofi felt hope swell as humans and merfolk mingled, a first step toward equality. Standing at the forefront, he addressed the crowd. "Tonight, we open a new chapter in our shared story," Kofi called, his voice ringing with conviction. "You have heard whispers of distrust, but tonight we forge a destiny of understanding and compassion." Una added, "Beneath our skins and scales, we are creatures of the same world, connected by the waters beneath us." Her words rippled through the crowd like waves washing ashore. Kofi saw friends leaning forward, their expressions softening, while merfolk gazed with tentative belief. From the back of the gathering, Ayana emerged, her voice bold. "To face the storm, we must embrace our differences. Let us reclaim our future instead of cowering beneath the weight of the past." A wave of support rippled as villagers and merfolk murmured in agreement. The threads of unity were weaving, connecting them beyond language. Fishermen shared losses, merfolk spoke of burdens, creating a bridge between their stories. But the gathering's unity was threatened by warriors emerging from the trees. Led by Arrow, cloaked in darkness, his voice booming. Enough of this foolishness. You risk everything for these creatures. A hush swept through the crowd. Kofi's heart raced. Arrow's disdainful words threatened the fragile alliance. Have you forgotten their betrayals? He demanded. If you ally with them, you lead our kin to ruin. Kofi stepped forward, defiance blooming. No, Arrow. If fear guides us, we doom our future. Together, we can rise stronger. Don't let old tales dictate our choices. Do mere words erase centuries? Arrow challenged. Do not presume to understand sacrifice. Una rose, her voice steady. We are here to heal. Our histories hold pain, but unity can mend scars. Kofi pressed on. We held stories in darkness. They can now be shared as light. Will we remain in shadows or embrace the unknown? The beach fell silent as warriors and villagers stood at a precipice. History waited to be rewritten. Strength and fear clashed, and amidst this burgeoning storm, they stood poised to collapse into darkness or surge forward into a dawn bright with possibility. The choice of the tide. Arrow's glare pierced the audience, confusion settling among the warriors behind him. The murmurs of the villagers and merfolk mingled in a pulsating current of hope and doubt, a tide pushing against the weight of centuries-old animosity. Kofi felt the air crackle around him as he stood resolute, searching for an ember of understanding within Arrow's defiant stance. You dare to question the loyalty of your own kind? Arrow challenged, his voice sharp as a splintered spear. You put your trust in those who delight in trickery. Is it worth casting aside our legacy for fleeting promises? Those promises hold the potential to change our futures. Kofi countered, his heart racing against the surge of uncertainty. Look around you. We are not here to deceive. We are here to share the weight of our stories, to reveal the truth hidden beneath our fears. The warriors shifted uneasily, their faithful resolve wavering as Kofi's words rippled through them. He sensed Arrow's grip on their loyalty beginning to loosen, but he knew it would take more than belief to dismantle the barriers built upon distrust. Kofi took a half-step closer, heart thundering in his chest. You and I know the tales that have haunted us, he said softly, his voice steadying as he met Arrow's intent gaze. But the truth is often more complicated, rooted in shared experiences. Don't you see that by turning away from this alliance, we only perpetuate the cycle of sorrow that has defined us? Tension thrummed in the air like bowstrings pulled tight, and for a moment, the world stilled. Arrow hesitated, his stern features softening like clouds parting to reveal hidden light. What you propose, he began, uncertainty threading through his voice. To share an alliance with the very beings we have long condemned. Change won't happen overnight, Kofi urged, digging deeper to reach Arrow's heart. But it starts with each of us, with the whispers of understanding and the courage to let the past breathe. Fear has held us captive for too long. We must face our stories together. Let the waves wash away old animosities. Una stepped forward beside Kofi, her presence steadying even the most restless souls. We can build something greater if we dare to share our hearts, she added. Only together can we protect our futures. A ripple of contemplation swept through the warriors, and Kofi spotted some of the villagers nodding along in shared solidarity. Yet, Arrow remained caught in a tumult of uncertainty, grappling with the beliefs he had held for so long. I do not believe, Arrow said, voice resolute but faltering as mists of doubt clouded his eyes. You see a possibility I cannot. The answer does not come from giving in. My path has been forged by these tales handed down from my ancestors. Then let us forge new tales, Kofi urged, heart thrumming with urgency. As merfolk and fishermen, we can become the architects of our destinies. But we need your voice, Arrow. We need you to help us tell this story. The waves lapped gently at their feet, the night air heavy with possibilities, and Kofi sensed the moment hanging delicately in the balance. Arrow had shoulders burdened by the weight of legacy, but even the mightiest storms could yield to a shift of wind. What if we fail? Arrow's voice trembled slightly, and Kofi could see the turmoil churning within him. What if we embrace them, only to be turned into prey once more? The spirits of my ancestors will haunt me. We can stand strong together, Una urged, her eyes shimmering with resolve. This new alliance is built on the lessons of the past. It is not a pact of surrender, but a promise to protect each other from further loss. Now, hesitance melted like ice under the sun, transforming the atmosphere that had threatened to engulf them in conflict. Kofi felt the fire of unity burning brightly, the threads of understanding illuminating a way forward. The crowd began to lean toward one another, flickers of connection igniting embers of courage. Kofi turned the energy toward Arrow, his heart guiding his voice. The path ahead is not merely against the shadows. It is alongside one another, firm on a mutual understanding that strives for compassion. Together, we can make our dreams a reality, no matter how uncertain the road may be. Slowly, Arrow's shoulders relaxed, uncertainty softening against the gentle tide of voices. He seemed to grapple with the remnants of fear clinging to his heart. And if treachery brews beneath the surface of those who smile in our faces, then we will face it together, Kofi replied with the earnestness pooling in his chest. In unity, we will grow stronger. Let the shadows take notice. We will rise with resilience against premature fears. Arrow drew a breath, weighing the decision like a ship anchored against the storm, teetering on the edge of resistance. But ultimately, he could bear witness to the hopeful faces surrounding him. Faces that ignited a fragile spark of faith within him. Fine, Arrow relented, voice cracking slightly as he kept a firm gaze upon Kofi. But I shall not shy away from the consequences. If this alliance is built upon the strength we conjure from one another, I will stand willing to lend my voice to the fray. I will trust my instincts to guide me, not fear. The crowd gasped collectively as a wave of relief flooded through them. Kofi felt a surge of exuberance bubble within him as he grasped that Arrow had crossed the threshold into the unknown, choosing hope over despair. Together, Kofi cried, heart racing alongside the jubilant cheers of the gathering. As Arrow stepped closer, his warriors followed suit, each member beginning to shake loose the embers of distrust tightly bound to their hearts. Those gathered crushed the remnants of the ancient tales woven from fear, forging new alliances from the ashes. The air grew heavy with gratitude as Kofi and Una stood at the forefront, joined by Arrow and the assembled allies who had bravely chosen to embrace the unknown. Each individual's voice rose into a harmonious chorus that celebrated a world where hope intertwined, bridging land and sea. Beneath the gaze of the rising moon, they prepared to face the tempest that awaited them. Uniting their voices, they stood together ready to confront whatever shadows loomed in the distance, not as separated beings but as one, a collective force of dreams gathered upon the horizon. In that moment of solidarity, Kofi felt an undeniable current shift through the tide, a promise that echoes through the ages. Change could happen when hearts chose to unite. The waves surged forward, bursting forth with the power of renewed hope, as they set the course for a future wrought from shared experiences, resilience, and a brighter dawn. The storm's precipice. The celebrations at the shoreline pulsed with newfound energy, saturating the air with laughter and songs weaving through the night. Merfolk and fishermen relished in their fragile unity, but Kofi felt a heaviness pressing on his chest. The storm they had prepared to face was closer than he wanted to admit, brewing just beyond the horizon. As the joyous hum of celebration began to fade, Kofi turned to Una, who stood beside him, her eyes reflecting the silver moonlight. We've ignited hope, but that storm we sensed, it still looms over us. We must remain vigilant. Una nodded, her expression resolute. It won't be easy, but now we have allies, hearts aligned against the tide of fear. We must train together, devise strategies to protect our communities. Kofi felt a swell of determination rise within him. A new legacy awaits us. We can prepare ourselves for the trials ahead and cultivate understanding, so the bond between our worlds deepens. As night deepened, Kofi called forth the council to gather once again by the water's edge. He watched as village leaders and merfolk navigated toward the glowing bonfires glowing by the shore, their expressions filled with guarded optimism. Arrow stepped forward, seemingly transformed by the evening's events, his once skeptical demeanor now tinged with strength. We need to build a defense plan, one that honors both our traditions while inviting growth. Kofi felt a sense of camaraderie surge through him as they began to lay the groundwork, blending ideas of strategy and compassion to overcome the divide. They dedicated days to training, creating shared rituals and practices that intertwined the strengths of both worlds. Day after day, they gathered at the shoreline beneath the ever-watchful moon, forging bonds as they learned to dance between the waves and shore. The fishermen taught the merfolk to cast nets and sail boats, while the merfolk shared techniques to navigate the depths, instilling confidence through shared wisdom. The growing alliance formed a mosaic of strengths, and Kofi began to see the story they constructed take shape, a tapestry of unity growing stronger with every new thread. As the sun rose on the final day of training, they exchanged their hopes, preparing for the burden of what might lie ahead. Yet beneath the whirlpool of shared ideals, Kofi's heart remained troubled. What would their united strength confront? And would it be enough to withstand the storm gathering force beyond the horizon? As that day waned into dusk, dark clouds began to roll in, heavy and ominous, casting shadows over the once serene shoreline. Kofi gazed at the creeping darkness, his heart racing, uncertainty intertwining with the threads of camaraderie. "Gather your spirits," Arrow commanded, voice reverberating through the throng. "The tide brings change, and we shall meet its challenge together." Kofi took a deep breath, feeling the electric charge of anxiety coursing through the air. He sensed that this was a moment nearly palpable with tension, a climax waiting to unfold. As they readied themselves, shadows of doubt encroached upon the edges of unity they had built. Suddenly, the winds began to howl, a gust that sliced through the air, wrapping around the assembled crowd as they steadied themselves. The waves surged higher, crashing against the shore, bearing witness to the storm that beckoned them nearer. "Stay close," Kofi bellowed, rallying those around him. "We must remember the truth behind these storms. Together we will stand firm, for we have each other." Yet, as the first boisterous cracks of thunder sounded, a loud voice pierced through the chaos. "Foolish creatures," came a mocking laughter that echoed from the depths. Emerging from the dark waters with a splendor tinged with malice, a figure adorned in shadows surfaced, Vera, an ancient mermaid notorious for her reign of supremacy over the depths. Her long hair flowed like tentacles through the water, and her scales glimmered like sharp shards of obsidian. "You think you can unite against the tides that have divided your worlds? You will fail," she sneered, eyes glinting with fury. "I thrive beyond the realms of mere mortals and your naive aspirations." Kofi's heart sank as murmurs rose amid the gathering. Fear rippled through the allied crowd, but he steadied his breath, recognizing the challenge before them. "We won't succumb to your shadows. We are stronger together than you could ever know." "Strength?" Vera scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. "Your unity is but a child's dream, doomed to shatter beneath the weight of truth. I shall unbind the fables of your hope and restore the fear that will drown you all." With a wave of her hand, Vera summoned the storm, summoning lightning that split the skies, ushering waves cresting higher. Kofi and Una stood firm, holding tightly to their newfound allies as they faced the tempest threatening to unravel everything they'd built. "Remember why we fight," Kofi shouted above the tumultuous winds. "Fear may threaten us, but hope shall remain. Together." As the first wave crashed upon them, Kofi felt the power of unity prickling against the uncertainty swirling within. He glanced around at the faces of the villagers and merfolk standing shoulder to shoulder, each embodying the courage to face both the storm and the shadows ahead. With Arrow by his side, ready to combat the incoming tide, and Una's unwavering resolve beside him, Kofi prepared to face the tempest. No longer would they cower beneath the weight of fear. They would rise, united against the storm threatening to tear them apart. And in that moment, standing strong despite the tempest, Kofi understood. The battle ahead might be fierce, but the bond they forged was destined to catalyze change, transforming tides, propelling them beyond suffering into the realms of hope. As the storm bore down upon them, they would push back against the swell of chaos, creating a wave of resistance that would echo through the ages, etching their names in a legacy of solidarity. The rising tide of change. The storm descended like an army of shadows, relentless and fierce, saturated with primal chaos. The wind howled as thunder rolled through the skies like a freight train, rattling the resolve of Kofi and his allies. Waves crashed against the shoreline, their wild fury crashing like titans. But in that moment, Kofi felt only the surge of adrenaline coursing through him. "Stand together," he shouted, voice straining against the tempest. "We are not alone. We stand as one." With Arrow and Una by his side, Kofi rallied the villagers and merfolk, their efforts linked. Fishermen pulling nets, merfolk pulling together currents of friendship that glimmered in the darkness. They formed a barrier, hands locked, hearts steady, resisting the crushing forces of fear and uncertainty. Vera emerged from the tempest, her figure towering over them as the winds howled in agreement. "You think mere words can save you?" she shrieked, her voice like ice laced with venom. "I have witnessed mortals shatter under far lesser pressures. You will drown in your own ignorance." Kofi steadied himself, anchoring deeper into the courage blossoming within him. "Let the tide come. We have faced far worse than you could imagine. We will not bow to your darkness." As the first waves crashed around them, unsettling patches of fear swept through the gathering. But Kofi felt the vibrations of unity, a pulse that transcended the storm's rumble. More than ever, he knew that it was not just about fighting against Vera. It was about standing firm for something greater. With a fierce determination, He summoned the memories of shared laughter and dreams, dredging up the warmth they'd cultivated together. Remember, he urged his allies, this battle is not merely against the storm, but for the future we believe in. Together, we shape the sound of the tides. The fishermen grasped their nets, instinctively learning the rhythm of the currents as the merfolk danced beneath the waves, weaving strength into the fabric of their shared resolve. Kofi and Una pressed forward, their voices rising above the ferocity that threatened to consume them. Let the ocean hear our hearts. Una cried, galvanizing the assembly. We are united. Each wave rises from the knowledge of our past and fuels the hope in our hearts. Arrow stepped closer, rallying their allies with a fierce determination. This is our moment. We confront the darkness together, through understanding and unity. We will face whatever challenge is thrown our way. With renewed energy, the alliance held strong against the crashing waves. The storm's chaos intensified as Vera unleashed her power, sending torrents of water spiraling toward them. But as the tide crested, Kofi felt an unbreakable bond weave itself among the group, a connection forged from trust, heart, and shared experiences. Now, Kofi shouted, urging everyone to brace themselves like a storm-bound ship. Together, we create our own tide. With one voice, they surged forward, rallying against the waves crashing towards them. As they advanced, Kofi felt the energy of unity swell around them, merging their forces into one powerful wave that crashed toward Vera's storm. The collision of their hearts ignited a radiant light, illuminating the encompassing darkness, dispelling the residual fear entwined in the storm. It felt as if centuries of lesson and loss surged through them as they forged a collective resilience, fighting not just for existence, but for a bright future. As the waves met Vera's tempest, it erupted in a tempest of shimmering light, dispelling the chaos that had held sway over their hearts for so long. The ground beneath them trembled, and the dark figure before them wavered, uncertainty etching lines across Vera's face. The tide began to shift as the shadows turned against her, drawn into the light of their unity. Vera's eyes flickered from fury to disbelief as her power waned against the illumination of their combined resolve. No, she shouted, disoriented as the storm began to dissolve around her. Your strength, how is this possible? Kofi, filled with a deep sense of purpose, took one final step forward. Our strength is born not from fear, but from love and understanding. This is the future we choose. As the light surged brighter, engulfing Vera, she began to dissipate into arcs of shimmering energy, slowly being pulled away from them like mist against the dawn. The chaos of the storm gave way to a gentler embrace, the unprecedented burdens roiling amid the remnants of the shadows that had once summoned despair. The wind dulled, the waves settled beneath them, and a newfound calm enveloped the scene. The crowd blinked in shock, disbelief painted across their faces as they watched the swirling shadows of Vera be devoured by the light. Unheard echoes met with the groundbreaking understanding. As equilibrium returned to the shores, a new energy coursed through Kofi and his allies, a camaraderie bound by the essence of what they had just achieved. Peering around, he sought Una's gaze, as relief erupted within him, an acknowledgement of what they had forged together to create a future filled with hope. A spirit of resounding joy emerged from the gathering as they grasped one another, emotions pouring forth like waves crashing against the shore, guiding them toward brighter tomorrows. Kofi felt the immensity of their victory descend upon them, illuminating the path ahead. In that moment, he understood that an intricate weave of destinies interconnected through choices marked by resilience and empowerment was not simply a dream, but a tangible reality. The sun began to emerge over the horizon, casting its warm beams across the beach, bathing the world in light and possibility. The gathering cheered, their voices harmonizing into the dawn, resonating with the promise of a united future, free from the shadows of their past. What shall we call ourselves? Arrow asked, a spirit of camaraderie sparking in his eyes. Kofi looked at Una, and both smiled knowingly. We are the guardians of the tide, Kofi declared, relishing the sound of their identity, a beacon of hope glowing against the horizon. And as the waves shimmered beneath the soaring sun, Kofi and his allies released their stories into the winds, proving the strength of unity in their hearts, forever forging paths together into the annals of time. A legacy that would transcend the depths of despair into a future woven with light, love, and fearless resilience.